Welcome to the History on Screen channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. Restraining devices were used in 1863 to prevent enslaved people from trying to escape through openings or windows. The iron mechanism attached to the body exposes the severity of the system and its methods of control. The record shows how freedom was constantly restricted. An image captured in Uganda in 1980 contrasts a weakened child's hand with the palm of a European missionary. The record became a symbol of a humanitarian crisis linked to severe food shortages in the country. The scene helped draw global attention to inequality and international aid. A scientist wearing protective gear descends into a restricted safety area at the Chernobyl plant in 1986. The entry took place after an incident at Reactor 4, requiring constant measurements of dangerous levels. The record highlights the technical challenges faced in that setting. The civil rights struggle in the United States gained strength in 1964 by challenging separation laws in public spaces. Drinking water from a restricted fountain became an act of peaceful resistance against exclusionary rules that divided people in daily life. The scene shows how social change could also happen through simple actions. A warning sign in Johannesburg illustrates the legal separation imposed in South Africa in 1956. These notices were used as social control to maintain rigid barriers between groups, limiting movement and rights for part of the population. The record shows how official messaging shaped everyday life. The impact of John F. Kennedy's death marked the United States on November 22, 1963. In a Sears store at Shop-A-Rama, a woman reacts while televisions broadcast the news from Dallas. The image captures the collective shock in response to an event that entered the nation's memory. Physicist Harold Agnew appears with a component tied to a highly complex scientific program in 1945. The item would later be connected to major strategic decisions of the period. The image shows how something small could carry enormous historical weight. The United States Marine damages a portrait of Joseph Stalin after Seoul was retaken by United Nations forces in the early 1950s. The gesture symbolizes rejection of Soviet influence on the Korean peninsula during a period of military tension. The image captures the political mood of the moment. The use of child labor in the agricultural sector of the United States continued through the first half of the 20th century. In cotton fields, very young children were drawn into the work, carrying heavy sacks during the harvest. The record reveals a harsh social reality of that period. Workers operated under extremely difficult conditions in the Hubert mine in Nevadaville, Colorado, at a depth of 850 feet in 1895. The record shows the use of metal buckets for the vertical transport of ore and workers, revealing the technological limitations and constant dangers of mining. A United Nations soldier drives a jeep carrying a figure dressed as Santa Claus during Christmas in the Congo around 1960. Local children surround the vehicle in a rural setting marked by traditional straw dwellings. The international military presence was trying to establish order and provide aid during the independence process. Jocelyn Kaweri poses in Beirut in May 1976 in front of a building that would be defended. The record comes from a period of internal instability in the country, with notable female participation in local organizations. The image reveals how daily life was crossed by uncertainty. Protesters in West Germany marched with regional flags during October 1959 in opposition to post-war social conditions. The event brought together young people and adults in a demonstration of political dissatisfaction, reflecting tensions and the challenges of rebuilding German national identity. The Rolls-Royce Phantom 4 moves through the streets of Madrid, carrying President Gerald Ford and General Francisco Franco on May 31, 1975. A mounted escort and Spanish and American flags line the route. The diplomatic meeting sought to strengthen strategic ties months before political transition. Mao Zedong receives George H.W. Bush and Henry Kissinger in Beijing on October 21, 1975. The handshake symbolizes diplomatic rapprochement between China and the United States in the middle of the Cold War. Kissinger watches the meeting that helped open the way for future global political and commercial relations. The flags of McDonald's and the Soviet Union fly together at a factory outside Moscow in 1989. The cityscape in the background shows apartment blocks typical of the socialist era. The record marks the economic opening of perestroika and the arrival of major symbols of capitalism into the Soviet market. French soldiers march in 1915 while a dog wearing glasses and a pipe appears in the foreground. The record, made during World War I, reveals a rare moment of lightness in the middle of a military setting. The scene shows how even animals became part of troop life. Circus entertainment in Copenhagen featured unusual attractions in the late 1950s. At the traditional Circus Schumann, bears were trained to ride motorcycles under the lights of the Kirkesbygningen. This kind of performance reflects the customs of the time and the search for visual eccentricity. The Goodyear airship carried out a daring maneuver while trying to deliver a bundle of newspapers to the top of the Empire State Building on October 1, 1931. The structure of the building was originally designed to serve as a docking mast, pushing the limits of engineering and urban commercial aviation. The restaurant windows on the World offered a privileged panoramic view of Manhattan from the 107th floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center in 1976. The location quickly became a symbol of luxury and modern New York architecture, attracting visitors from around the world to its famous windows. Workers pose on a suspended platform during the final stage of construction of the World Trade Center in New York. In 1973, the completion of the Twin Towers represented a milestone in modern engineering and American economic growth, permanently changing the skyline of Manhattan. The end of World War II brought intense celebrations in many urban centers. On August 14, 1945, the announcement of Japan's surrender created euphoria in the streets of New York. The image captures popular excitement, closing years of uncertainty and global change. The deck of the USS Langley displays a dense line of biplanes parked under the sun at Pearl Harbor. Converted from an old coal ship, this pioneer of the United States Navy symbolizes the birth of carrier-based aviation. On May 19, 1928, the vessel was establishing new naval tactics in Hawaii. Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals at the Berlin Olympic Games in 1936, defying ideas of racial superiority promoted by the German regime before thousands of spectators. His performance turned the track into a symbol of merit and resistance. The image reflects the global cultural impact of that achievement. President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act on July 2, 1964, creating a legal milestone against discrimination based on origin, religion, or color. The White House ceremony symbolized decades of social mobilization for equality under the law. The moment reinforced the institutional turning point of that era. Martin Luther King Jr. received a kiss from his wife Coretta Scott King after being released on bond in Montgomery, Alabama in March 1956. The activist leader had been detained during the historic bus boycott, a resistance movement that challenged segregation structures in the southern United States. Industrialist Henry Ford receives the Order of the German Eagle on his 75th birthday on July 30th, 1938. The highest decoration for foreigners was presented by German diplomats in Detroit. The event reflects the complex diplomatic relationships before the war. The city of Pleasanton, Texas, experienced a major change in education in 1957. After a community vote ended separation in the schools, students from different backgrounds began working together on academic projects in everyday life. The record shows social transformation reaching the classroom. President Lyndon Johnson experienced deep emotional strain in 1968 because of an international crisis in Southeast Asia. While listening to recordings sent by his son-in-law, Captain Chuck Robb, he reflected on choices that were dividing the nation. The scene shows the human weight of political decisions. Winston Churchill and Charles de Gaulle walk along the Champs-Élysées on November 11, 1944, on Armistice Day. Paris was celebrating liberation after occupation by the German regime, and the parade symbolized cooperation between Allied forces. The record marks the return of public space and collective spirit. A colossal crowd filled the fields of a farm in Bethel during the Woodstock Festival held in August 1969. Although organizers expected about 50,000 people, the event drew more than 400,000 young attendees, becoming a landmark of the counterculture and redefining music history. Star Sophia Loren was involved in an unusual episode during a rally in Italy in 1956. After losing control of her Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing, the vehicle left the road, a moment recorded by photographer Federico Patolani, who captured the actress's immediate reaction. Austrian bodybuilder Arnold Schwarzenegger moved through the streets of Munich in 1967 to promote his own gym. The young athlete used public space to demonstrate the physical potential of the sport and attract new students to his business. College basketball in the 1980s witnessed the rise of Minuta Ball, whose remarkable reach redefined defense around the basket. The South Sudanese athlete used his extraordinary height to dominate the paint, becoming one of the greatest shot blockers in history before his professional career. The charisma of André the Giant crossed borders in the 1970s, making the French wrestler an iconic figure in world popular culture. In public places, his imposing size contrasted with the smallness of children, who reacted with surprise when meeting the man who dominated global arenas. The aerospace industry reached a historic milestone in 1962 with the official introduction of the Boeing 727. The commercial jet was designed to operate on short runways and at smaller airports, expanding global air routes and strengthening the American manufacturer's dominance in passenger transportation. Passengers board a new Sikorsky S-40 of Pan American Airways during 1932. The imposing structure of the first large commercial flying boat reflects the luxury and technological innovation of aviation between the two world wars, allowing international routes across the Caribbean and Latin America. Royal Navy sailors prepare a diver on the deck of HMS Blake in 1895. The heavy metal suit and air hoses connected to a hand pump reveal the technical complexity of Victorian underwater operations, which were essential for maintaining the fleet at sea. Thomas Edison poses beside his revolutionary invention, the phonograph, in mid-1877, marking the birth of recorded sound in human history. The device used tin foil cylinders to capture sound vibrations, forever changing the way society consumes music and preserves the human voice. The head of the Statue of Liberty was displayed on the Champ de Mars during the Paris World's Fair in mid-1878, years before its final assembly in New York. The record reveals details of the copper structure and the monumental planning of Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi for France's gift. Industrial women workers in England in 1914 played an essential role in the production of military equipment during that period of mobilization. Cleaning the interior of large artillery pieces required precision and speed, showing the massive entry of women into fields once dominated by men. The image reveals a less remembered side of the industrial effort. The massive exploratory vehicle known as the Antarctic Snow Cruiser crossed the icy southern plains in 1940. Designed to serve as a mobile laboratory, it featured gigantic tires to overcome cracks in the ice, symbolizing the boldness of modern engineering at the time. Representatives of indigenous peoples present a ceremonial salmon to the engineer of a modern passenger train in the state of Oregon in 1940. The meeting symbolizes the intersection of ancestral traditions and railroad technological progress in the United States during the 20th century. Young Italians carried long poles filled with fresh pasta to dry outdoors in 1947, using a traditional method of large-scale production. The manual work on the balconies of old buildings reflects the country's post-war economic resilience, preserving centuries-old food-making techniques. Coney Island Beach in New York was packed with swimmers during the summer of 1950, showing the vibrant leisure culture of post-war America. In the background, the iconic Wonder Wheel and roller coasters dominated the amusement park landscape, serving as a popular escape for families in the city. In the urban storefront world of the post-war period, a woman uses an automatic stocking vending machine installed on the sidewalk. The metal device reflects the era's technological curiosity and the search for convenience in daily life. The scene shows how automation was beginning to enter the simplest habits of city living. Consumers buy bread and snacks at a drive-through market in Los Angeles in 1949. The image captures the growing car culture in the United States after World War II. The quick service made it easier to purchase basic goods and drinks. Fast food culture became established in Staten Island during the 1970s, reflecting the rapid expansion of restaurant chains in American suburbs. The staff posed beside the iconic mascot, showing the visual marketing and low-price menus that shaped consumer behavior. The inside of a 7-Eleven convenience store in Texas shows the commercial look of 1959, with full shelves and typical advertisements. The arrangement of the counter and the presence of items such as adult products and milk, sold by the gallon, illustrate post-war consumer habits. The record captures the advertising style that defined the era. Located on 3rd Avenue in New York, Sig Klein's Fat Men's Shop was an iconic commercial landmark during the 1950s. The store served a specific niche in men's fashion, displaying direct signs and illustrations that defined its identity in the city's urban landscape. A busy view of San Francisco Chinatown reveals the everyday life of Chinese immigrants in 1898. The record details typical clothing and the district's dense architecture, which served as an important cultural and commercial center on the west coast of the United States. Pablo Picasso appears in his art studio in Paris in 1944. The painter remained in the French capital during a period of outside control in World War II, keeping his work active. This creative environment served as a refuge for his Cubist art. George Harrison and Stevie Nicks were photographed together during a casual meeting in 1978. The record brings together two major names in world music, with Harrison wearing a shirt that points back to his Beatles past. This meeting between artists from different generations of rock illustrates the vibrant cultural scene of that time. The meeting between President Jimmy Carter and the members of the Bee Gees in the White House Oval Office symbolizes the height of the disco era in American culture. Maurice, Robin, and Barry Gibb visited the seat of government on July 5, 1977, underscoring the enormous influence of popular music on politics at that time. Marilyn Monroe appears in a casual moment during the filming of River of No Return in 1953, when she suffered an ankle injury. Even away from the studio's glamorous spotlight, the star kept her cultural relevance, showing the constant media attention focused on her personal life. The famous Dion quintuplets were recorded in a portrait in New York City during 1950. The Canadian sisters had become a global media phenomenon since birth and were constantly followed by the public. The record captures the young women in identical outfits during adulthood. Walt Disney presents the original Disneyland concept in 1955, showing the shift from his animation studios to physical entertainment. The map illustrates iconic areas such as Main Street and Sleeping Beauty Castle, marking the birth of the modern theme park industry. Grace Kelly and Frank Sinatra share the film set in 1956, the year High Society was released. The production brought together icons of film and music, representing the height of Hollywood sophistication in that decade. The record captures the luxurious atmosphere that defined major productions of the era. The original model of the USS Enterprise was built in the mid-1960s for the filming of the classic Star Trek series. At more than 10 feet long, the detailed miniature allowed the production to create innovative visual effects on television, influencing generations of science fiction fans. The original sign on Mount Lee was erected in mid-1923 to promote a new luxury housing development in the Los Angeles area. The 13 giant letters, lit by thousands of bulbs, could be seen from far away, establishing the visual identity of the rising world capital of film. French consumers try Coca-Cola for the first time in 1950. Their uncertain reaction to the American drink symbolizes the cultural expansion of the United States in post-war Europe, marking the start of new patterns of global consumption in everyday French life. A monumental structure shaped like the letter M was built in the Piedmont region to welcome the Italian leader in 1928. Members of youth organizations stand on its different levels, showing how architectural symbols were used for political propaganda. Queen Mary's magnificent dollhouse reveals an impressive level of detail for its time, having been designed by the renowned architect Edwin Lutyens. In 1923, technicians organized the transport of this masterpiece to Windsor Castle, ensuring the safety of its working miniatures. Thousands of wires converge on the old telephone tower of Stockholm in 1890, connecting about 5,500 lines across the Swedish capital. The imposing metal structure centralized communication before underground modernization. The record details the height of the early technological age of telecommunications. The City of London became the stage for a technological breakthrough in 1966 with the launch of the Sinclair Microvision. Considered the smallest television in the world at the time, the device had a screen of just 2 inches and represented the height of British electronic miniaturization during that decade. A group of young people eagerly tunes into a program on a portable television set in 1949. At that time, the technology was a fascinating novelty beginning to transform domestic life and entertainment, foreshadowing the era of mass communication that would shape the decades ahead. The automobile salon at the Hotel Astor in New York displayed luxurious models in 1918, reflecting the sophistication of the automotive industry in the early 20th century. The event took place in a richly decorated setting with chandeliers and classical architecture, attracting elite visitors interested in transportation innovations of the era. Benz Velo automobiles move along a dirt road in 1895, representing an early milestone in the history of Mercedes-Benz. The design of the motorized carriages with thin-spoked wheels shows the technological shift from animal power to internal combustion engines in Europe. Workers labor on the construction of a wooden water main in Seattle in 1900. The black and white record shows the group positioned on the cylindrical structure made of slats fitted by hand. The technique was essential for water supply and the expansion of American urban infrastructure. Aerospace engineer Lonnie Johnson revolutionized the toy industry in the 1980s by creating the Super Soaker. By displaying his prototype and official patent, the inventor showed how applying principles of thermodynamics transformed a simple water gun into a global phenomenon. The Alcatraz menu lists options such as grilled sausages and banana pudding on March 13, 1956. Through the dining hall structure, the internal organization of the famous federal facility can be seen. The record offers an unusual view of the routine and rules of the place.